Sometimes I'm fine means exactly what it sounds like, but sometimes I'm fine means I'm overwhelmed. I'm scared. I don't even know where to begin. For parents raising children with bleeding disorders, there often isn't room to fall apart in the middle of the moment. There's a problem that needs solving, a doctor to call, a treatment plan to figure out. Someone has to stay steady. Our guest today is Cassie Miller. She's raising two daughters with von Willebrand disease. One has had a fairly, we'll call it typical experience. The other has faced surgeries, joint bleeds, additional diagnoses, and years of unanswered questions.
I have two daughters. My oldest is Naomi, and she is a very typical von Willebrand's patient. She hasn't had very many complications with her bleeding disorder. And then on the other hand, we have my youngest. Her name is Julie, and she is not the typical von Willebrand's kid. She is now on Prophy, which is not very common with von Willebrand's, and that's been amazingly helpful. She's ended up having multiple surgeries, and she doesn't heal as well after the surgeries and just tends to have a lot of complications due to her bleeding disorder. Our journey with that started because the girls were getting a lot of bruises, and they were in foster care at the time, and their foster parents got accused of abusing them because of all the bruises. And they knew that that was not the issue, and so they started searching for why these kids were constantly covered in bruises. And that's where they found the diagnosis for von Willebrand's. I found out about it because this is all during the process in which I was adopting them, and I never expected it to be what it ended up being. I expected a couple of bleeding issues every once in a while, and otherwise for it to be fairly normal from what had read about it. And it's been anything but.
As Julie's medical needs became more complex, Cassie responded the way she always had. She started looking for answers, looking for solutions, and pushing fear aside until there was time to deal with it.
When I don't know what to do, I tend to sit down and I look at facts. Okay, there's a problem. What is the solution? How do I figure this out? And I don't tend to panic until it's over. Julie was actually just given a diagnosis of a hypermobility thing with Ehlers-Danlos, which has affected her bleeding disorder as well. I think when getting that diagnosis, it was less about fear and more about relief, because it gave us a reason why hers is so much different. Everything is always fine, but it's not, you know? And you tend to say that more to the people who don't really understand. But if you go talk to somebody in the community who also has a child with a bleeding disorder, you can really tell them what is going on and how you're feeling about it, because they tend to understand more of what is going on.
Everything is always fine, but it's not. That tension sits at the center of this conversation. Keeping things together can help you get through the moment, but eventually, whatever you're carrying has to find a way out.
So recently we've had a lot of medical things going on with Julie. And in the moment, I chose to close it in. Julie's having some major GI issues. We went in to see one of her physicians about it. And they said, "Oh, look, this image is looking okay. So it's doing all right. So we'll see you again in a year." And I left that visit feeling fear because we could not continue what we were doing. I left that visit with the "I'm fine" attitude, and I went home and I did my very best writing at 1 o'clock in the morning after you can't sleep at all. And I wrote a 4-page letter to the doctor detailing why this was not okay and why this wasn't fine. I sent that to them, and it changed a lot of things. Julie's doing much better now, and that's was the catalyst that actually got her the EDS diagnosis, and they listen. Sometimes if you can't say it in the moment, go home, process it, and turn it back in. It can make a difference. You do need to say what needs to be said, even if you can't tell it to their face. Write it out, send it to them. They'll read it.
Speaking up doesn't always have to happen in the moment. For Cassie, advocacy looked like taking the time to process what had happened, putting it into words, and coming back with clarity. It's an approach she's also tried to pass along to both of her girls.
Well, one thing I've always told them is don't react in the moment. And that's one thing I try to live by, because if you react instant with the emotion, most of the time you are not going to get accomplished what you want, because you can't have it all driven on emotion. Sometimes you have to be able to step back, allow yourself to process that emotion, but then take what that emotion is getting and pull the objective parts out of it, what needs to happen, so that you can tell them everything. Julie, especially, has done really well with this. She has very much gotten into advocacy. She has now gone to the Capital Advocacy Days for 4 years. Last year, she actually did some speaking there. I was really proud of her for that. She was advocating for someone else. She has taken it to heart, and she's very quiet, especially for appointments. But when it comes to speaking out for others, she's really done well.
Fear and anxiety still pop up, but it's how we manage and how we teach others to do so.
I hope that one day they can learn to not allow that fear to control them. You're allowed to have your moment, but then take that moment, process it, and find a way beyond it. Don't live in the fear. It doesn't do any good. I think a lot of times it's, I'm not okay right now, but I'm going to be. I'm fine means that even if things are not going perfect, we will figure out a way to make it better.
Fear isn't really what Cassie's challenging. It's pretending we're okay when someone we trust is genuinely asking. For her, honesty begins with knowing who can hold the real answer.
Everybody has the stigma that people will ask you how you're doing, and everybody says, oh, I'm doing great, I'm doing fine. Everybody feels like nobody really wants to hear what's going on. But that's not always true. You know, yes, if I am passing a random person in public and they ask how you're doing, I'm going to always say, yeah, I'm doing great, I'm doing fine. But if you know the person and they're asking you, you need to, if they're honestly asking, you need to give an honest answer back.
I'm not okay right now, but I'm going to be. Maybe I'm fine isn't something that we need to stop saying. Maybe we just need a few people in our lives who know to ask one more question, or who know what I'm fine really means. Let's figure out a way to get through this together. Thanks to Cassie Miller for sharing her story today. And thank you for listening to another episode of I'm Fine, a storytelling series from BloodStream that explores what it means to say I'm fine, one episode at a time. I'm Patrick James Lynch. We'll see you next time.